Hello. I'm gonna let everyone trickle in. You can hear the chirp of the Twitter. Letting others kind of come in. Hopefully. Hey, Trevor. Just hey, man. Let's see. Live on Periscope. Hey, here. So I've been using TweetDeck, and TweetDeck's pretty great. If you guys don't use TweetDeck, I highly recommend it. Uh, TweetDeck is really great as far as like just the real-time stuff, but you can add any hashtag or anything to be its own column, right? I'm making sure that I'm getting my syntax right, and um, my tweet is going to be so awesome. That's really cool. You and Trevor and Danielle. So I'm saying live on Periscope, a musochat, literally. Come out to show them, right? Hashtag come out to show them. That's clever. Thanks, Trevor. All right, this will be my last tweet. All right, got 7 of us. Let's see. It's my house. All right, we've got some more viewers. Okay, cool. So the music chat was really actually extremely engaging, and I was really blown away by the answers and the tasteful disagreements and the sharing with one another. I was really blown away by how, as was I last time, but I was really blown away by how when somebody had something really salient to say, particularly Sean Galvin and some of the points of Sam Riesling, that when someone dropped these points that people clustered and they were like, yeah, like this guy. I really enjoyed that. Hey, Sugar. I wonder if that's... What's up? Riesing. Oh, my bad. Yes, I apologize. Yes, Sam Riesing. Right. Not Riesling like the one. Right. Yeah, sorry. It's yeah. Yeah, speaking of wine, yeah, I could probably use some. Also, it's art music. Uh, um, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that term, that the art music, I've been thinking about this, and actually, like, I have a group, the Plenary Art Ensemble, and I'm at least here in Durham noticing uh, a really extremely strong and interconnected gallery scene, and so I felt like in given certain places that I have my music in regularly, like Cincinnati, my best friend lives there, and I try to go there as much as possible and make music with him. It's such a pleasure. Um, but I noticed that the galleries and the gallery owners in particular are kind of in the same kind of age range as we are, right? Emerging artists, 30s and that sort of thing, and so yeah, I really think that art music is a good term. The point was brought up that there was That to say art music would then to also make the distinction that something isn't art music. And that's interesting because, especially when it comes to venue, uh, you know, explicitly, um, sorry, yes, art music and venue. It's kind of like there are some trimmings that are expected for it to be quote unquote art music, and it was brought up the distinction between art music and art song by some of the vocalists that chimed in on the chat. I'm gonna scroll over. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Shout outs uh, to just everybody that's promoted the musochat. Shout outs to all the retweeters, to the people who at least have welcomed me as the host, and I'm really, really appreciative. I worked pretty hard on the questions. I felt like a discussion of musical surface was important, and it was really tricky to do that. Um, Shout outs to Rebecca Jeffrey Schwinden, musicology professor. Uh, Love the wordplay, Danielle Schwabignon Blanc. Um, that's that's adorable. Sugar Zen Vindeel. That's great. That's amazing. Sugarats uh, Zen Vindeel. Uh, but yeah, shout outs to Rebecca Jeffrey Schwinden, a musicology professor at University of North Texas, colleague of mine here. She recently moved, and she had a really strong voice in the chat this evening, and I really appreciated that. She made some really wonderful points about, the term new music was actually used in the 1750s to describe particular subgenres of French music, which is her specialty, and I think that's a really valuable insight. Um, I know it's tricky in the chat interface, but were there any moments or topics besides art music that you guys felt kind of popped out and stuck out to you guys? I've got the hashtag here. There's some really funny discussion between Nat Evans and myself about, and let's see, we were talking about uh, food, Hilary Labont as well, talking about gourmet cuisine. My uncle sells spices in Cincinnati. He's Colonel D. Has 3 or so spice shops in the greater Cincinnati area. Good night. Um, and he was making the point to me that that the way that he interacts with restaurant owners and people is kind of similar to how we court venues and ensembles, and I'm trying to think about in what ways specifically. Well, just in terms of the curating of the pairing process, right? Programming being kind of like a, course meals, or I know that there's some ensembles in DC that do some alcohol pairings, right? Particular kinds of beer, right? Bitter beers, more weedier kinds of beers as being kind of like difference. I know, here in Durham we've got some really wonderful breweries. Hey Garrett. Some really wonderful breweries and cideries, and now some distilleries that are coming up. Oh yeah, so someone just tweeted just now the metadata question. Martha and I were having a little bit of a side chat, hashtag side chat, about big data. This idea that as I've pointed out genre and sort of defining it in sort of XY, right, relative to like how you sound, and on this axis being how closely do you align with others that do that sort of thing? Feeling free to have you uh, define that however you want. But what she was getting at, which I found really interesting, was this multifaceted problem of interconnectedness, right? Of course, we're on social media, so there's all of the lateral connections. The musochat itself is rhizomatic in how it moves laterally across content. But some of the things that she brought up, and I want to sort of see what exactly her phrasing was. Right, so she used the term metadata. And yeah, answer 3, I don't fit into either category, but I suppose whatever feels most organic, metadata is hard. And she's right. Metadata is a large thing that's driving the web at this point, driving the technologies. Certainly anyone that runs a website and has Google Analytics, a discussion of that came up actually with Sam Riesing. And search SEO, but the big data question relative to musical genre. I'm a member of a musical community that it's called What.cd. If you know what it is, it's a platform in which you can download music. But what was interesting about that particular platform that I'm on is that when you go to an artist, there's not similar artists. There are similar artists, but they're connected with a vertice, sort of showing distance, and that's probably a sort of a function of download pattern of I'm sure there's probably a few parameters, but I mean that once you start getting into analytics of the metadata of our content, it's really difficult to start to put all of these pieces together. It would be interesting if there was a way of not necessarily, maybe not tagging per se, but if there was a way of connecting the recorded media of our content with the venues of the live performances, with some people just joined. We're talking about metadata, and we're talking about is it difficult? I mean, I'm sure it's difficult, but like, what would be some strategies of ways of connecting, say, the live performance? I have a performance in Brooklyn at Jack or something like this. How is that performance and the content that's generated in that, in terms of like, say, social media buzz or promotion, in terms of the content that is also created, and not just in promotion, but in sort of the postlude recap of the concert, Instagramming, just general content creation. How is that content that we've created connected back to the original music, and how is that larger entity now able to then work hand in hand with the promotion of that musical content? What would be interesting there is that you would have sort of locational symmetries and connections between other pieces that might be on the concert or the performers that are performing it, their other musical outputs. There's a lot of really nuanced connections that I think that Martha Sy commented about metadata. When she said that word, I was like, wow, yeah, we're dealing with metadata concerns. We're dealing with really nuanced, n-dimensional problems. And, what are some of those strategies to use the content and enhance what we've already done? We're all working our asses off to try to get where we are, to get what we have. That's not in question. We're classical musicians, right? We know the meaning of really hard and devoted practice. So it's not necessarily a function of effort. I think it's a function of efficiency. How efficient are these technologies that we're forced to use? How efficient are they at actually building an audience, sustaining what we're doing, connecting before, during, and after the fact? Certainly Periscope is great. I've been saying the word shoutouts a lot, but Sam, early on in my real digging into the Twitter new music community, he had mentioned some promotion that I did, not just for the Righteous Girls, but specifically for the New Music USA concert, that they were periscoping. The feed wasn't particularly great. Wasn't sure if they were on Wi-Fi at the venue, but I think enough of the work came across. It was the Righteous Girls with Pascal Leboeuf, and there was the Wedding Ensemble, and I think Steve Coleman performed It's What Happened at Subculture. And it was on a Thursday, and I was able to tune in on Periscope, and I was just really blown away by the fact that I was able to view this concert that had like $200 a plate, this gala, and here I was in my studio room upstairs. I was working on some electronic music, and I was able to just tune in with my phone to this concert. I was really blown away by that. I thought that was very, very powerful. So how would content like, for example, this Periscope stream? I'm planning, since Periscope archives to the phone, I'm planning on putting these two videos, the pre and the post chat, up on my YouTube channel, which is its own, which right now is a kind of a bit of a dumpster fire, but the content will be available. I will tweet it out. Let's see. Hey, what's up, Michael? What about, you're in the chat. Thank you for joining. What did you find in particular interesting about what we were discussing this evening? Was there anything in particular that you were like, aha, I'm so happy that X, Y, or Z was discussed? I'm quite curious. I'm going to go back to my personal notifications if anyone's tweeting me. No, it doesn't look like it. You guys can, if you wish, at Kenneth D. Stewart. Not sure of you guys who are familiar with Periscope and what it has available. If you tap in a certain spot, like, you'll see a heart. If you scroll, here we go, the discussion of art versus non-art music, and what does that mean? Right, exactly. Yeah, I thought that was really great. I mean, it was proposed that hashtag art music be a replacement or a, proxy or whatever. Unsure if it was proposed as an adjacent term, right? Hashtag new music, hashtag art music. And as I mentioned, very quickly it was saying, like, well, if A is art music, is that, is the caveat that B isn't? There was discussion of concert halls, right? Imbuing oldness, or it being, let's see. I got your tweet, Garrett. What is oldness and newness have to do with the artness as a way? Maybe I might be conflating those two discussions, but it seemed like those were close together. Garrett is asking, what was my favorite mini exchange of tonight's musochat? I think that the SEO discussion that I was having with Sam is really great, and I look forward to following up with that. That's one of the challenges of being a host, is that I wasn't really able to answer any of my own questions. I do plan on going back and answering them from my own perspective. I suppose I could do it here on the Periscope stream, but we'll see. But my favorite mini exchange, well, one of the things that I was really just pleased to see in general was I was really, really happy to see people saying, well, come out to Seattle or come to here. I was seeing real real invocations for participation and potentially collaboration. I think that in this age we are content creators, whether it's content as far as Instagram posts to promote a concert with, say, music samples, or whether that's SoundCloud pieces. Every service that we use has its own social community and its own native structures, right? SoundCloud has its, I had a friend, Ruticelli, who's a really awesome cellist and singer, songwriter, an electronic producer, and she believes very strongly in the SoundCloud community that's out there for adjacent artists to promote oneself, but that's contained within the SoundCloud universe. I personally just put up a website and I found it difficult to come out of this sort of service-oriented little community cluster thing and to try to, on my own terms, curate that into the thing, into a presentation. But so I was really happy to see the just the personal, hey, this is great, you're awesome, always welcome here. I think that the discussions of metadata and of Google SEO are very, very important. I mean, this technology is not going away. This technology is simply advancing, and just like with our instruments, there are standards. There are standards of use, and there is a kind of literacy of this, a kind of literacy of the content and of the ways of doing it that need to be shared. Last week, Sam and I had a little mini discussion about how important it is. From my perspective, I think I'm someone that knows how to use this technology. How important is it to share this? Use how to use hashtags, how to quote retweets, just like the actual mechanics of using these platforms. I think it's important that we tell each other how to use them when. But so getting to the technology thing, I think that I was happy to see metadata, Google SEO coming up. I certainly was pushing the discussion toward technology as far as a critique of YouTube, of Bandcamp, of the streaming services. One of the things that I noticed about using Bandcamp to release a CD for my new group, and I'm currently working on the things, but yeah, my group, the Plenary Art Ensemble, I don't know, I think it's probably backwards because I'm viewing it for me, but we'll see. I noticed that on the Bandcamp interface, every track can have its own whole set of tags and of genre distinctions per track, and that's even, as Garrett pointed out, that a cutesy or a musically descriptive definition, like something like chamber metal, or something like this was the term, that this term be used to describe the piece, and while it's interesting, it only really applies to, say, 2 or 3 of the 8 movements. I mean, that's a real challenge relative to that. I mean, does chamber metal, or does it describe, is it a way in to the piece, sort of through those ones that have descriptive definitions? What I really liked about the way that Sugar ran the chat last week, and I echoed it this time because I felt that it was really important, but was like, how did you find out about the chat? Well, it would be interesting to take some sort of analytic, about how people came to engage with our own music. What tracks did it come from? I think the SoundCloud Pro account, that's like $15 a year, I think they do actually have an analytic from what track did X, Y, and Z come from in playing yours. I'm not really sure the usefulness, and why I haven't really invested in that is I'm not sure the usefulness outside the context of SoundCloud, right? You'd be paying all of this extra money that would add up to be, $120 a year of extra cost to further the analytics on a proprietary closed system and environment. I think I'm not sure if there's a way of doing that kind of connectedness. Let's see, we got some tweets here. New music is not a genre. If I compose music a la Mozart right now, it's new, but not a new genre. Anything, even silence. Scream it on the roof because people won't be able to hear it over that bass. Right. Hashtag that bass. Yeah, that's really interesting. Let me read this just as a block statement here. New music is not a genre. If I compose music, and this is at Bobzapan H. New music is not a genre. If I compose music a la Mozart, and presumably in the musical style of Mozartian music right now, it's new, but not a new genre. Anything, even silence. All caps. Scream it on the roof because people won't be able to hear it over that bass. Speaking to just the sheer magnitude and volume of these other musical genres that are out there, and they're being quite loud. It makes me, you mentioned the bass. It makes me think of trap music. There's trap hip hop, which is slower in certain respects than EDM trap. There are sort of socio-economic distinctions between, I think, those two sort of subgenres with the same distinction. Certainly, there's probably, as with a lot of hip hop subgenre, issues of race, of class, of regionality. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you chatting along, and I look forward to the next chat. Thank you so much for participating. Yeah, so just speaking to the sort of trap thing, there's a subgenre with two terms, but sort of two musical contents, and I'm sure that it's probably no accident that there's quite a bit of conversation musically in the musical surface between the subgenre of hip hop trap as well as EDM trap going on, probably because they're using the same hashtags and they're using the same words and search phrases to tag both. And so it's kind of, I have a friend who's a quite successful professional DJ, and when he's looking for music, that's something that you have to really note. You can't just go to like these sort, and I think, well, I was just going to say, you probably would then have to curate trusted sources, sources that we feel either use these genre distinctions in the ways that we want them to, or of ways in which we can. I'm sorry, my apologies. Thanks, Pickle Shy. I was saying something. I got lost. My apologies for getting distracted. There's a new tweet here. Books. In what setting do you feel the term new music is used most effectively? Books. And when it's actually fresh off the paper. Well, that's interesting. I mean, aren't we moving toward a paperless society in which paper, right? I mean, certainly in the academy, the document, the piece of music. Shout outs to Caroline Shaw. The piece of actual like music itself as well as like the other documents, the creation of these score objects, of these things, how we get them out there. Yeah, I think that new music is a term that's relevant to scores because probably, well, and you say books as well, right? That could be, your ML410 musicological deep like composer studies, or that could be topic oriented. So yeah, so books is definitely a thing. But I was actually thinking about scores the other day, and I was thinking, to what extent, how is the economy of scores doing? Right? How are the publishers selling their music? Is there a casual audience for score buying? Is there an infrastructure for that kind of sort of unilateral connection, the rhizomatic connection I was talking about relative to these scores? It obviously, the big publishing houses, it would be interesting, there's probably quite a few musical similarities between composer A, who publishes on Boozy, and then composer whatever that could be an indie label or a publishing house or any kind of music collective. There are probably these rhizomatic connections between, but how does the interface of the economy of these things, how are they allowing that interconnectivity to grow the thing? It's a really important discussion, I think, that we're having relative to, not selling our things, but getting that content out there. Let's see if there are any more Twitter questions. I've been on here for quite a bit of time. We have web viewers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. I look forward to next week. I will certainly be tweeting it out. And promoting it in any way that I possibly can. As I mentioned before, not that this was a particular kind of experiment, but as I'm getting to use these technologies, I kind of limited myself to a Twitter audience, people that were going to be familiar with the Twitter interface. I think musochat, I think we could do a better job of saying, here's how to do this. I know that I had my little like musicological preamble to the chat in which I sort of gave my 3 things that said, now I understand that genre is tricky, but, and I felt that was important for the context of what I did, so that as to avoid the sort of the like, I don't necessarily agree with this, or I don't know, getting into the semantics. I felt that the discussion was actually really great, and we all understood that there were slippery semantics. We all understood that we were going to have different definitions. That was explicit, and that came across, and I was really, really happy to see that. But I wonder if I could have done any better a job at saying, here's how to do it, here's how we're going to label our tweets, it might be a good idea to have like a homepage for musochat that like has like a sample question and some sample answers in which the ways that we can reply, and we can quote retweet, and we can do it. That just kind of demonstrates if you wish to accomplish this kind of social thing, do this. If you wish to accomplish this, do this. And if you wish to do this other thing that could be a side comment or whatever, here's a sort of a way of doing that. That might be good for the next time. And of the 3 of you that are watching, you can always tweet if you have any ideas or questions. Shay is saying thank you for my hosting of the musochat. Learned a lot. Putting up a homepage soon. Excellent. That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's really, really wonderful. I'm really happy to hear that. I think you've done a great job storyfying the tweets. I really enjoyed in my research preparing for the chat, reading through them and thinking about my questions in terms of how it was done previously. And I'm just so happy that the chat was received. That the chat was received as well. So I think I'm going to sign off now, but I'm going to try to use Periscope more. I really want to show you guys my workshop. I've got it's not a hashtag new music workshop, but I suppose it's I work with modifying instruments and essentially sort of preparing the electronics is what I like to say, because once our sound becomes signal, then essentially like guitar pedals become the pencil erasers of our 1950s Steinway quarter grand or whatever John Cage had to use. So I'd love to share the workshop with you guys. I for sure plan on when some people come through town. We've got some really great new music concerts coming. I would like to do some Periscope Q&As. I'd like to do some Twitter chats. I think that'd be really great. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the further discussion. Thank you guys again so much. I really appreciate it. This has been, I think, a really great learning experience for me in just collecting my thoughts on how I feel about these things. And I really appreciate all the support, and I appreciate seeing all the support from the community. I'm very, very, very happy that we came together the way that we did and had the discussion that we had. As always, you can tweet at me. You can follow me on forms of social media. I try to be at Kenneth D. Stewart on everything, including my .com. And I really appreciate everything. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a nice evening.